Yo, what's good? What's good? What's going on, man? We here, we talking about California reparations. We at the end, we at the teeter-totter right now. The task force, they've already put out their report. If y'all haven't seen it, y'all go check it out. It's up there, it's online. I got it right in front of me. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go through it myself later. I have not went through the whole thing because there's a lot of I could just say storytelling, but storytelling. There's a lot of storytelling about experiences through time that's post-slavery, pre-slavery. I ain't sure pre-slavery, but post-slavery. A lot of suffering. You know, definitely they went through a story of a slave that came from Missouri, bought his freedom, bought a bunch of land, and then couldn't pass his land off to his kids. And right now, that land is a natural preserve, yeah. So like, they just pretty much took the land for them. You know, so you got experience like that just came a lot, you know, with these slaves. You know what I mean? Especially when they were free already, because California was a free state. There's a time and period in between California when slavery first ended. Slaves actually didn't realize that they were free, and so slaves were, even new slaves, snatched from one place and took to California and just treated like a slave. And there was actually a lot of fight in the state to stop the slave owners from having slaves in California, but it was allowed for a while. So definitely in this case where this slave had a child, they were very having a lot of issues with him having a child, a girl. I'm not sure if it was a white lady, but her having children with a slave, and the children were seen to be illegitimate. So in that case, you know, I mean, you'll see where that's coming from. But right now, we're going through it right now. So I'm just gonna skip forward because they're addressing. They have some chapters starting at 19 addressing enslavement. They got addressing racial terror, addressing political disenfranchisement. Addressing housing segregation, unjust property, addressing separate and unequal education. So we're just gonna jump through a few. I really want to start at how they gonna address slavery, because I did not go through this. I started it. Oh man, I ain't have enough time to go through it. It's pretty long. There's a lot of pages to it. So definitely their recommendations. They want to enact a resolution affirming the state's protection of descendants of enslaved people, and guaranteeing protections of the civil, political, socio-cultural rights of descendants of enslaved people. So that's a step. Pretty much, this is the law we can't go against. We can't make laws against this. If there's something that seems to, you know, take away protections, remove political power, or any kind of socio-cultural rights being removed from the descendants of slaves, that's going to be a problem. They want to amend the California Constitution to prohibit involuntary servitude. So that should have been there, but I guess it's something new that they're going to put there. They want to require payment of fair market value for labor provided by incarcerated persons. Okay, so raise that money up when people are working in jail. They pay them pennies on the dollars, quarters, or whatever. They're gonna pay them minimum wage, you know, fair market value. So if they're doing something that costs $25 an hour, they're gonna get paid. They're gonna have a check when they get out. I mean, that's a start. And a lot of these things aren't just for black people. They're gonna affect all the people. So you see, they're not specifically saying for black people, but the goal is that we're gonna grow from it. You know, they want to emphasize the rehabilitation in California Department of Correctional Facilities. So they want to emphasize the rehabilitation. So they actually, this is a good bill. They're gonna dress it up. Maybe they dress it up as reparations, so they don't pass it. But they want to really, I always ask, like, corrections, rehabilitation. They're not correcting nothing. They don't definitely not rehabilitating nobody. What are they? Why they got the names? You know what I mean? So if they want to emphasize that part of the corrections, you know what I mean? I'm all for that. Abolish the death penalty. You know, they're gonna slide something. They're gonna slide something in there. If black people getting killed more than other people, then maybe that's a rule. You know what I mean? But if you know, I don't know. That's gonna draw some division amongst people. But definitely, they're not. This is not a put together made thing. These are just recommendations that get things can get put in and taken out. So this is all for slavery, and then I guess knowing that slavery did morph into the prison systems. I guess this is definitely correcting that as far as the system. They want to prohibit private prisons from benefiting from contracts from the the CDCR to provide reentry services to incarcerated paroled individuals. So that was a lot. Prohibit private prisons from benefiting. Okay. Pretty much stopping them from benefiting from contracts, so making money. So they can't manipulate the system in some way on certain contracts. It's real specific. So they're going through it. When you go through it, they got a lot. They're explaining all these issues for slavery. But I definitely seen some racial terror. Addressing racial terror. On racial terror, they got recommendations on racial terror. They advance the study of intergenerational and direct and indirect impacts of racism. So, more studies on that. Establish and fund community wellness centers in African American communities. Fund research to study mental health issues within California's African American youth population and addressing the rising suicide rates among African American youth. Expand the membership and mental health services oversight and accountability commissions to include an expert in reducing disparities in mental health care access and treatment. So a lot of mental health things. Another fund, community-driven solutions to decrease community violence at the family, school, and neighborhood levels in African American communities. Okay, they want to address. So they're actually gonna they're gonna have a fund to reduce violence. So maybe counter some of this media, some of this music, somehow, some way. You know what I mean? Counter that. Okay. This next one, they want to address and remedy racial discrimination against African American LGBTQ plus youth and adults. Reduce economic disparities among African American LGBTQ plus population, and reduce disparities in mental health and care outcomes for African American LGBTQ plus youth and adults. So definitely there's going to be some money going to the children in that part, so I'm sure if anything's going to be in it, that's going to be in the reparations bill. Could look forward to that. California. They want to implement procedures to address the overdiagnosis of emotional disturbance disorders. To address the overdiagnosis of emotional disturbance disorders, including conduct disorders in African American children. Okay. I mean, I hear that because are they overdiagnosing these kids for being disturbing just to put them in special classes and set these kids behind a little bit? They want to disrupt the mental health crisis and county jail cycle of African American communities. Create and fund equivalents to prime UC. Okay, some more. They got a lot of things. Eliminate the legal protections for peace officers who violate civil or constitutional rights. Recommend. Hold on, sorry. They want to abolish qualified immunity doctrine to allow access to justice for victims and police violence. So definitely a lot of recommendations going in here. I'm looking for the part where they're gonna give us money. So apologize for that. I know I read something about it, just to go off a little bit on this. They were talking about they were definitely talking about how much money they were gonna give you. So I was reading the article. Forgive me, I forgot. I'll actually pull it up in a minute. But just off the top of my head, they were talking about that if you lived here for any California, any African American that lived in California for some odd years would receive a proportional payment of how long they lived in California if they were enslaved, even outside of California, because California is not a slave state. So California didn't have a slave. I don't think they had a slave patrol. They didn't have any kind of organizations to handle slaves. They really just kind of just let the slaves be the slaves, and they just let the slave owners be the slave owners, and didn't touch them until a certain amount of time when they faced a lot of pressure. But so just going through that, they were wanting to pay, I think it was up to $1 million. If you stayed there for 7 years, you'd be owed $1.2 million as an African American slave. And as far as how they were gonna prove you just had to prove that you either had a slave, you're a descendant of a slave, or you had a relative, a free person just that lived prior to 1900 to the 1900s, prior to the 1900s. I believe that's all it was. So it wasn't too many generations out. So if you had a living African American ancestor, great great prior to 1900, you were definitely. And to prove this, I don't even know if they were going to require much proof. I don't know how they were, maybe it was just birth certificates. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I know, if people, I messed around and did the ancestry and all that, and you can, kind of find your way all the way up where, I'm like, cha-ching, I'm there. But, I just suggest y'all find that root, find that name. It's somewhere, they'll definitely find a way to prove it for you. So it didn't take much to prove, a lot of people from the South kind of already got it, but some of us have people that moved to California in the 1900s, so we got relatives that are from the South that moved here, that the slave owners took them there, then the free slave, then this and that. So it's a little different. It's not just one trace, but definitely find that trace. They'll be in. They're talking about giving money for war on drugs. The war on drugs. I definitely didn't. I didn't look at the breakdown for that one, but giving money for the war on drugs was definitely something that I wanted to talk about, because I think it's kind of more important. It's even more important than slavery in a sense to most of us, because a lot of we 1-2 generations out of that, or even some of us that was in it, So if you look at the war on drugs through, probably ending off in the 2000s before the 9/11, which they kind of transitioned into the protection era, but the war on drugs was scaring all Americans. Then there was video games and all that. But then the airplanes came and it all changed. So the war on drugs is definitely something that they need to cash out on. They need to put some money aside for that, and let everybody cash out. As you see, a lot of these some of these reparations are going to be, as far as the cash payments and African American communities, definitely, like, some things that are, I've seen recommendations as far as removing forgiving child support for African Americans, um, free tuition for African Americans. So there's some specific things that are for African Americans, but a lot of these law recommendations will affect all races, some more than others, because some were already good. So that's why the effect will be more for others, But just to put it all on the papers, like, everybody's gonna benefit. Maybe create more equality, So I suggest that y'all don't look at this California reparations as some sort of, you got to pay for something, or why I got to pay for this, or why I got to pay for that. It's just, it's a debt. When like I ain't complaining, like, why I got to pay for the military tanks in Ukraine. I ain't complaining about that. It's like, it's a debt that got to be paid. So California created a debt by allowing this happen, all this free labor, and they didn't charge them. That we were, the people living in California were looking to California, the government of California, to create an equal and free, and the times had changed already. So it's not like this is some new thing. They was holding on to something that was old. You know what I mean? They was holding on to something that was already against the law. So it's not like this is slavery times. This is after slavery. California is they're going to be paying reparations, which I kind of want to see how they calculate the reparations for that. They said the 7 years you would receive up to, you would be owed up to 1.2 million. 1.2 million, 7 years. If you lived in California for 7 years, you'd receive Inside California's proposal to pay 1.2 million in reparations to Black Americans. And this is the Hill reporting on this, just to get everybody mad. Like, what? And we're looking at it. I was looking at the report. California, there's a few states. I think California was the fifth, had the fifth most Black people at 5% of population, but I think in total amount it was like, I don't know exactly how much it was, but it's just 5% of the California population. It was 8. It's dropping. It dropped 3%, and I don't think necessarily because more Black people, more died. I think it's just the way the population's demographics are changing, But other than that, it's like, it's dropping 3%. So it's not a whole lot, even though we the fifth state. So they are recommending 1.2 million. And that's that's gonna get everybody mad. And this is news. This is recommendations from way back when. You know what I mean? So we'll see how this plays out. Oh man! So they going back to their policy. Chapter 22 policies addressing housing segregation and unjust property. Yep. So they want to enact policies overhauling the housing and industrial complex. They want to collect data on housing discrimination. So research. Provide anti-racism training to workers in the housing field. Psychological. Expand grant funding to community-based organizations to increase homeownership. All right, there's actually some something to actually create more assets for African Americans. Provide property tax relief to African Americans, especially descendants living in formerly redlined neighborhoods who purchased or construct a new home. Okay. I wonder if they backdate that. All right, provide financial assistance to increase home ownership among African Americans, especially descendants, through shared appreciation loans, subsidized down payments, mortgages, and homeowners insurance. Okay, that helps out a lot. Subsidized? We like subsidized, but you gonna put another lien on the house? We really not gonna leave. Better, you know what I mean? Let us know what it is. You know, you gonna put, oh, we gonna get a free loan with no interest, but then you got this lien you got to pay off. You know, that's a different story. Still, it works though. Anything works. Anything's good. Even if it's that, it's still good. Requires state review and approval of all residential land use ordinance enacted by historically and currently segregated cities and counties. So another review, which who knows? Maybe those have some families get some of their land back. You know what I mean? Maybe someone in your family would acquire some land, or just because of a lot of this land was taken, and they're gonna review a lot of the paperwork on this going back, and you may find, maybe when great somewhere had some property that they didn't get passed forward because of racial discrimination and just the policies they had those days. So we'll see. They want to repeal crime-free housing policies, repeal crime-free housing policies. Doesn't sounds bad, right? But it is kind of bad the way they use it. The way they use the word crime. I would just say, when they want to say crime-free, you can't. It's actually creating. It's creating more of a problem. They want to increase affordable housing for African Americans. So I don't know what that looks like. It does sound good. Provide restitution for racially motivated takings. Excuse me. Sorry. Provide a right to return for displaced African Americans, Californians. So those are a few things that they definitely want to do for housing. We definitely know there was a lot of redlining going on. A lot of that all across America. Racism in environment and infrastructure. Do I want to dive into that? Stolen labor and hindered opportunities. The unjust legal system. Let's see. Let's go into stolen labors and hindered opportunity. That's an interesting one. Dive into that real quick. So they want to. Maybe we pass on this one. Let's just do one. They want to fund African American businesses. They want to fund African American banks. And that's what we got right there. The unjust legal system. Probably some studies. We'll see what we get from that. Okay, they want to allocate funds to remedy harms and promote opportunity, eliminate barriers for African American prospective attorneys by funding legal education and ending discriminatory gatekeeping at the state bar. They want to prohibit cash bail and mandate that those who are acquitted or exonerated be reimbursed by the entity or entities at fault. Enact forcibly force forcible legislation with penalties and dismantle the schools to prison pipeline and decriminalize the youth justice system. They want to amend the penal code to clarify and confirm decriminalization of transit or other public disorder offenses. They want to amend the penal code to shift public disorder and infractions and low law crimes outside of law enforcement jurisdictions. Prohibit pretextual traffic stops. Prohibit those pretextual traffic stops, pedestrian stops. Prohibit inquiries and consent-only searches. So they want to mandate policies and training on bias-free policies. Just going through. So there's more right now, but other than a few of them, I don't see them being too mad about it. I mean, maybe they can flip some of these mandate policies and training on bias-free policies. They're going to teach them how to police. I don't know. Maybe they want to enact legislation that requires the Department of Justice to promulgate model law enforcement policies designed to prevent racial disparities in policing. Repeal the 3-strike sentencing. Abolish the death penalty. Strengthen and expand the Racial Justice Act. There's more. It's the longest one. They want assess and remedy racial bias treatment of African American adults and juveniles in custody in county jails, state prisons, juvenile halls, and youth camps. Accelerate scheduled closures of identified California state prisons and close 10 prisons over the next 5 years, with financial savings redirected to California American Freemen Affairs Agency. Freemen Affairs Agency. Sounds good. They want to we're going to require fair market value for labor provided by incarcerated persons. We heard that in the other one. Emphasize, okay, we heard that in the other one too. Prohibit private prisons. Got that one too. Increase the effects to restore voting rights of formerly and currently incarcerated persons. And provide access to those who are currently incarcerated for eligible to vote for text. All right, eliminate legal protections for peace officers. Heard that about. Recommend. Oh, yep, heard that one. All right. So, just going through it, like they definitely going all right. We don't know how much of this is gonna be in law. We see there's a lot of just wording. Some of these things ain't really gonna happen, but definitely the reviews and the studies like that leads to something. Kind of like this is a study, and hopefully this leads to something. We'll see if there's any cash payments. There's definitely a big fight on that, but California reparations, y'all. If y'all ain't in here, get here, because you want to get that time linked up so you can get that check. You know what I mean? But I'm going to catch y'all. Y'all like, subscribe, comment. Appreciate y'all listening. Catch you on the flip side.